Before today's episode, a quick message. This is Mark, and I'm the creator of Lantern Podcasts. I'm really looking to talk with more of our listeners to get a sense of what you honestly like and dislike about these shows. So if you'd like to chat, please shoot me an email at hello@lanternpodcasts.com, and I'd love to speak with each and every one of you. Thanks. Now on today's episode.
Israel has hit Beirut's southern suburbs twice since the April ceasefire, and the U.S.-mediated talks are still being described as planned. This is Iran War Daily. Today, 16 dead across Tyre, Nabatea, and the surrounding areas. Analysts on the record calling the Hormuz MOU a time-buying instrument, and a named IRGC commander spelling out what Tehran says it is building while diplomats keep talking.
Rubio said, peace deal today on May 25th, 4 days ago. So, yeah, we're checking that receipt.
The diplomatic track and the battlefield track aren't just parallel anymore. They're colliding in real time, and we're going to pin down exactly where. Here's Zaina Kojer at Al Jazeera English.
Israeli forces have carried out a strike on Beirut's southern suburbs for the second time since a ceasefire was agreed in April, while intensifying attacks across southern Lebanon ahead of planned U.S.-mediated talks. Israeli strikes hit Tyre, Nabatea, and surrounding areas, killing at least 16 people and wounding dozens more, according to Lebanese health authorities.
Al Jazeera is now on record, saying Israel has struck Beirut's southern suburbs twice since the April ceasefire. That latest hit landed alongside strikes on Tyre and Nabatea, with at least 16 dead, according to Lebanese health authorities, and thousands pushed north past the Zahrani River. So the Lebanon ceasefire thread we left under strain has now turned into fresh Beirut and Tyre strikes, and the timing matters, because these attacks are happening ahead of planned U.S.-mediated talks, not after they fell apart.
Israeli and Lebanese military delegations are reportedly headed to Washington, while Israel is also reducing residential neighborhoods in southern Lebanon to rubble. So the U.S. is hosting a ceasefire conversation with one party that's intensifying strikes right before the meeting. At what point do we stop calling that mediation?
Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah infrastructure and expanding a security zone after continued drone attacks on Israeli positions. That's the Israeli military's framing, not something independently confirmed. Hezbollah says its drones are a response to the occupation of border areas. Both claims are on the table, but neither one changes the civilian displacement picture Lebanese health authorities and humanitarian agencies are documenting.
Rubio said peace deal today on May 25th. 4 days later, there's a second strike on Beirut's southern suburbs and 16 dead in the south. That gap between what was teased and what's on the ground is the story of this diplomatic track.
Al Jazeera English writes,
Analysts tell Al Jazeera the proposed US-Iran Hormuz Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, is a time-buying ceasefire that extends negotiations over sanctions, oil sales, nuclear issues, and control of the strait, rather than a real deal.
Al Jazeera published analyst reaction to the Hormuz MOU on May 24th, and the framing is very specific. This is a time-buying ceasefire, their words, that extends talks over sanctions, oil sales, nuclear issues, and control of the strait. Not a resolution, just a pause with a label on it.
And meanwhile, Trump is posting that the deal is largely negotiated and the Strait of Hormuz is reopened, while Iranian state media says Tehran will keep managing the strait. Both statements landed in the same news cycle. Somebody is lying, or both are, or neither one has read the same document.
The Bagheri thread from Moscow belongs here. He said uranium stockpiles are not on the agenda. And if the analysts are right that the MOU is built as a time buyer rather than a resolution tool, that red line isn't a negotiating posture. It's the load-bearing wall underneath the whole thing.
Rubio said peace deal today on May 25th. We're 4 days past that. The analysts who actually read the MOU language are calling it a stalling mechanism on the record. So what exactly was Rubio announcing?
Firstpost writes,
U.S. President Donald Trump says negotiations with Iran are moving forward, even as key disagreements over Tehran's nuclear program and sanctions relief remain unresolved. Reports suggest a proposed framework could include a temporary ceasefire extension and further talks on uranium enrichment, sanctions, and frozen Iranian assets.
This is the May 25th Firstpost report. Trump says talks are moving forward. Rubio teases a breakthrough today. We are now 4 days past that today, and the Al Jazeera analyst sourcing from May 24th is already calling the proposed framework a time-buying ceasefire, not a deal. Those two versions were running at the same time and pointing in opposite directions.
Rubio said today on May 25th. Since then, Israel has struck Beirut's southern suburbs twice. There are at least 16 dead in Tyre and Nabatea, and the analysts who were actually reading the MOU text were calling it a stalling instrument the day before Rubio made that claim. The shelf life of today in this negotiation is apparently 0 days.
To be precise about what's still unresolved in the report itself, uranium enrichment, sanctions relief, frozen assets, all of it is still open. That's not a deal with rough edges. That's the whole substance of a deal, still sitting on the table.
And Bagheri was in Moscow that same week, telling anyone who'd listen that uranium stockpiles aren't even on the agenda. Rubio is calling a breakthrough, while Tehran's Security Council is drawing a red line around the core issue. That gap isn't a negotiating posture. It's the architecture of why there's no deal.
Al Jazeera with Obaida Hito.
Israel has continued to pound southern Lebanon, killing one person and injuring several others, according to Lebanese state-run media, a day after it targeted a commander of Hezbollah's elite Radwan force in the southern suburbs of Beirut.
Al Jazeera is reporting a second straight day of Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon. Ain Bal in the Tyre district, 3 strikes on Divin in Marjayoun, and 3 more on Nabatea, per Al Mayadeen. That follows Wednesday's targeting of a Radwan force commander in Beirut's southern suburbs, which was the first strike there since the April ceasefire. Israel is also issuing evacuation orders for Deir al-Zarani, Bafroa, and Habush, citing Hezbollah ceasefire violations.
So here's the sequencing. Israel hits a Radwan force commander in the Beirut suburbs on Wednesday, pounds Tyre district in Nabatea on Thursday, issues new displacement orders, and somewhere inside that same calendar window, U.S.-mediated talks are described as planned. Rubio said today on May 25th. It is now May 29, and the Tyre district is being struck for the second time in 2 days.
The Khalibaf-led Doha delegation and those planned U.S.-mediated talks are the same diplomatic track. And Doha now has operational context it didn't have Monday, because Israel is intensifying strikes on Lebanon's south on the eve of that window, not after it broke down.
There's no stand-down instruction running through any diplomatic channel to Hezbollah's Radwan force. That's not an inference anymore. That's what it looks like from the outside when you're targeting a Radwan commander while shelling his operational area at the same time. The Doha room isn't touching this.
From Sahin Demir at Anadolu Agency.
General Mohammad Karami, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC ground forces, said Iran has established a multi-layered national defense system, emphasizing a decentralized and asymmetric strategy in response to ongoing tensions, according to state media IRIB.
General Mohammad Karami, the IRGC ground forces commander, gave a named on-record statement through state media IRIB, describing Iran's defense posture as decentralized and asymmetric, explicitly designed to make conflict unpredictable for adversaries. That's not a diplomat talking. That's a military commander laying out the doctrine.
And here's what that doctrine means in practice. Karami is citing 17 million mobilized volunteers alongside regular forces, and he's claiming a failed U.S. Special Operations mission in Shereza, Isfahan. That's a specific operational claim, named location, named failure, sitting right next to the week's time-buying MOU. The battlefield posture and the negotiating posture are not in the same conversation.
We flagged this Karami statement last episode when the HMM Namu attribution came up. Tehran's denial of regional incidents now has a named institutional framework behind it. A decentralized, asymmetric command structure is a built-in answer to any single attribution. "That wasn't us" stays plausible when the doctrine is deliberately fragmented. And Bagheri saying uranium stockpiles are not on the agenda in Moscow fits the same architecture. These aren't just negotiating positions. They may be load-bearing walls.
Rubio was teasing a peace deal on May 25th. Karami's statement is from April 9th. The IRGC's doctrinal posture hasn't moved an inch toward what Rubio was describing. And nobody in the diplomatic press asked who exactly was being negotiated with if the command structure is deliberately decentralized.
If you rely on Iran War Daily for clear, concise updates, you might also like Ebola Watch, a daily DRC and Uganda Ebola outbreak briefing covering case counts, border tracing, WHO vaccine news, and traveler guidance. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to dig further, we've put links to every story from today's briefing in the show notes. Take a look there for the pieces that stood out to you. That's Iran War Daily for today. This is a Lantern podcast,